By 25, you should have a career. By 30, you should be married. By 35, you should have kids. These expectations aren't just casual remarks. They silently shape how we view our lives. This is the social clock, society's invisible timeline dictating when we should reach certain milestones. Originally reflecting cultural norms, it has become a harsh measure of success and worth. Living under this pressure feels like running a race you never chose. We compare ourselves to others, friends, family, strangers, and feel behind, even when we are growing. This pressure comes from family traditions, cultural norms, gender roles, social media, and economic realities that push us towards stability over true desire. The result? Anxiety, self-doubt, burnout, and guilt for choosing a different path. What if we saw time not as a deadline, but as a personal rhythm? Your pace is valid even if it doesn't fit the social clock. Freedom comes from recognizing this, returning to what truly matters, and living life on your own terms. You're not late, you're simply on your own time. 1. What is the social clock? Different from the biological clock. There is an invisible clock that doesn't tick but strongly influences many aspects of our lives. The social clock. Unlike a regular clock that measures hours and minutes, this one sets expectations for when certain life milestones should be achieved. For many of us, especially women, this timeline begins quite early. By the age of 18, there is an unspoken pressure to have a clear sense of direction, to know what path we want to take. By 22 or 24, society expects us to have graduated from university and secured a respectable job. By 25, financial stability should be well underway. Then, between 27 and 30, the questions start rolling in. When are you getting married? Or isn't it time to settle down? By the time we reach 35, the pressure intensifies, encompassing expectations around having children, owning a home, and reaching career achievements. These milestones feel urgent, as if there's a ticking countdown demanding that we check these boxes on time. These expectations are not inherently wrong. Ambition, planning, and setting goals are important parts of personal growth and development. However, problems arise when these expectations become rigid and universal standards applied indiscriminately to everyone. Life is complex and unique for each person, shaped by different circumstances, desires, and values. When the social clock becomes the measure of our self-worth or success, it can create harm instead of guidance. Much of this pressure comes from family and cultural influences. Parents often repeat the expectations they were raised with, sometimes unconsciously passing on their worries about societal judgment or what is considered normal. Cultural norms tend to link certain ages with specific achievements, especially for women, creating a narrow window for balancing career, family, and personal happiness. Social media adds another layer of pressure. It highlights only the most polished moments of other people's lives' engagements, promotions, houses, and babies, without showing the struggles or detours behind them. This constant stream of curated success stories can make us feel inadequate or behind, even when we are growing and progressing in our own ways. Economic realities today complicate this further. While previous generations often reached milestones such as homeownership or financial independence in their 20s, rising living costs, fluctuating job markets, and longer education periods have pushed these goals further down the timeline. Yet, society's expectations remain the same, creating a mismatch that leads to frustration and self-doubt. Living according to the social clock can disconnect us from our true selves. It may cause us to make decisions based on fear of being late, rather than on what truly matters to us. This can lead to stress, anxiety, and regret rushing into relationships, settling for jobs that don't fulfill us, or abandoning dreams to conform to external standards. The first step toward breaking free from this invisible clock is awareness, recognizing that many of our anxieties come from societal pressure, not personal failure. Understanding this gives us the power to question these expectations and redefine success on our own terms. Living outside the social clock is not about rebellion. It's about honesty and self-trust. Life is not a race with a fixed finish line. People find love, career success, and happiness at different times, and none of these are too late. As a woman, I have learned that being off schedule doesn't mean being off purpose. Sometimes the most meaningful experiences come when we allow ourselves the time we need. In a world that urges us to rush, choosing to slow down and honor our individual pace is one of the most courageous acts. Our lives are journeys to be lived, not timelines to be followed. 2. Are you living on your own timeline or someone else's? Sometimes the pressure doesn't come from people around us. It comes from the invisible expectations we've silently absorbed over the years. As a woman navigating adulthood, I've realized that the hardest deadlines aren't the ones from work or school. They're the ones set by society, quietly ticking in the background. This is what many call the social clock. And when we don't realize we're following it, we might find ourselves making choices that don't really belong to us. One of the first signs that you're living under the pressure of the social clock is the constant feeling that you're already late. You could be working hard, taking care of yourself, learning new things, but a part of you still believes you're not moving fast enough. Even when no one says it out loud, there is a silent countdown. You should have figured out your career by 25. You should be financially stable by 27. You should be married or close to it. By 30, the list goes on. When you haven't ticked off those boxes, you feel behind, even when you're doing your best. This often leads to comparing your life to others, especially people the same age. You scroll through social media and see old classmates getting promoted, married, or traveling the world with their partner. You start to question your own progress. You might even feel guilty for not having done more, even if your path has been completely different. It becomes hard to celebrate your own milestones when you're always measuring them against someone else's. Another subtle but powerful symptom is the pressure to catch up. You may not even realize you're doing it. You might stay in a job you don't like because it's seen as safe or stable. You might get into a relationship that doesn't feel quite right just to avoid the fear of being single in your late 20s. Sometimes decisions that seem practical on the surface are really just responses to the fear of being seen as behind schedule. Then comes the quiet shame, the feeling that you should have achieved something more respectable by now. You might find yourself dreading birthday parties or reunions because you're afraid of the question, so what are you doing now? You start to believe that your current reality isn't enough, even if you're still growing, learning, and healing. That inner doubt eats away at your confidence, making you second-guess your pace, your process, and even your worth. Finally, the most dangerous sign is rushing into major life decisions just to avoid being seen as late. It could be taking a job because it looks good on paper, not because it excites you. It could be accepting a proposal, not because you're in love, but because you're scared of being single past a certain age. These choices, made under pressure, rarely bring peace, only more uncertainty hidden behind a mask of normalcy. 3. Where does the pressure come from? Sometimes the heaviest pressure in life doesn't come from a single person or moment. It builds slowly, silently, and deeply from many directions. As a woman in adulthood, I often wonder, why do we feel so behind, even when we're moving forward? Why do we carry such invisible weight about being at a certain place by a certain age? The answer, I've learned, lies in something called the social clock, and the pressure it brings comes from multiple sources that shape our thinking, often without us noticing. One of the strongest influences is family. Many of us grow up hearing familiar lines like, "People your age already have a family," or "Don't wait too long or you'll miss your chance." These comments may come from a place of love or concern, but they often stem from fear of being judged, fear of falling out of line with what is considered normal. In many cases, parents aren't just worried for us. They're also worried about what neighbors, relatives, or society might say. So we grew up with a subtle message. Being single or unsettled at a certain age is something to be fixed, not simply lived. Next comes the influence of culture and tradition. In many societies, there's a lingering belief that women, more than men, should settle down earlier. The expectation to marry young, have children, or choose stability over exploration still exists in many forms. Culturally, success is often defined as having a stable job, a home, and a family by a specific age not necessarily being fulfilled, happy, or aligned with one's passions. As a result, many of us chase what looks like success on the outside, even if we're still unsure on the inside. The impact of social media only intensifies this. Online, we are constantly exposed to highlights of other people's lives, vacations, weddings, promotions, house tours. What we don't see are the struggles, doubts, or failures behind the scenes. This constant exposure creates a distorted picture of what life should look like. A single video showing a 25-year-old buying a house or a 28-year-old running a business can trigger a wave of self-doubt. We began to question our timeline, even if it was perfectly fine before we picked up the phone. And then there's the economy factor that's often overlooked but deeply relevant. Today's cost of living, housing prices, and job competition are significantly more intense than in previous generations. Yet, society continues to hold us to the same milestones our parents followed. Owning a home, starting a family, or having stable savings by our late 20s is often no longer realistic, but it's still seen as the benchmark. This mismatch between reality and expectation quietly adds another layer of guilt and anxiety. What's important to understand is that none of these pressures come from a single villain. They come from systems, habits, and inherited beliefs that have simply gone unquestioned for too long. No one person is at fault, and blaming doesn't fix anything. But becoming truly aware of where this pressure comes from is the first step toward loosening its grip. We don't have to rush towards someone else's finish line. Maybe, just maybe, it's time we write our own timeline and walk it with intention, not fear. Four, the cost of chasing the social clock, a personal reflection. At first, following the social clock can feel like a safe and logical path. It gives structure, goals, and a sense of belonging to a larger societal rhythm. But over time, for many of us especially, as women navigating adulthood, it becomes clear that living strictly by this invisible timeline comes with consequences that run deeper than we initially realize. One of the first things I noticed when I tried to keep pace with the social clock was a growing disconnect from myself. Instead of making choices based on what I genuinely wanted, I found myself asking, what should I be doing at this age? Rather than, what feels right for me now? The result? A gradual silencing of my own voice. Hobbies, dreams, and even preferences began to blur under the pressure of trying to fit in or keep up. When your actions are guided by comparison instead of authenticity, you begin to lose the most important relationship in your life, the one with yourself. This disconnection is often followed by stress, anxiety, and insecurity. There's a constant inner voice whispering that you're late, you're behind, or you're simply not enough. Even when you accomplish something meaningful, it's hard to feel satisfied if it doesn't align with where others expect you to be. The anxiety isn't always loud, but it's persistent. A quiet worry that you're falling short, even when you're giving your all. Over time, this breeds low self-esteem and robs you of joy in the present. Perhaps one of the most damaging outcomes is making life-altering decisions that don't align with your values. I've seen people rush into relationships not because they felt ready, but because they feared being the last one among their peers. Others take jobs that offer stability over purpose, simply to appear successful on paper. I've done it too, making practical choices for the sake of appearing on track, only to feel emotionally off course. These decisions, made from fear or external pressure, often lead to regret later on. Not because the choices were inherently wrong, but because they weren't truly ours. Another subtle but serious impact is the lingering sense that we're never quite enough. When we're constantly measuring ourselves against fixed milestones, we forget that life is full of different paths, each valid in its own right. This mindset can easily spiral into self-doubt in even early adulthood. Feeling stuck, directionless, or questioning every past choice becomes common. It's hard to feel peace when you're always racing against time, not your own, but one imposed on you. Living by the social clock doesn't always lead to disaster, but it often comes at the cost of peace, purpose, and personal truth. The longer we ignore our inner timing in favor of external expectations, the more we risk building a life that looks right but feels wrong. There is nothing wrong with having timelines or goals. The problem begins when those timelines aren't truly ours. The real success isn't reaching a milestone by a certain age, it's reaching it with clarity. Joy in the quiet confidence that we did it because it was right for us, not because it was expected. 5. How to break free from the pressure of the social clock. The pressure to follow a predetermined social timeline can be overwhelming, but escaping its grip starts with awareness. The first step is to recognize what motivates our goals. We should honestly ask ourselves, is this goal truly what I want, or is it driven by fear of comparison? And am I living to fulfill my own dreams or to prove something to others? These questions help separate authentic desires from external expectations and allow us to regain control over our lives. Changing our mindset is equally crucial. Every person has their own internal clock, a unique rhythm that reflects individual experiences, values, and circumstances. No one fits perfectly into society's fixed timeline. Success and happiness don't arrive according to age or social milestones, but through meaningful experiences and choices that resonate with our true selves. Understanding this can release the heavy burden of keeping up and encourage us to focus on what genuinely matters to us. Healing from the social clock's influence involves practicing patience and self-compassion. We must learn to delay comparisons, recognizing that life is not a race and that everyone's path unfolds differently. It's important to create a personal definition of success that aligns with our values rather than external standards. Embracing past moments where we feel behind with kindness instead of judgment opens space for growth and peace. Living honestly in the present rather than being trapped by regrets or pressures empowers us to move forward on our own terms. Clear communication with family and close ones is also essential. Often, pressure arises unintentionally from loved ones who care deeply but may not understand our individual choices. Expressing our perspective openly helps them see that our decisions are not acts of rebellion, but conscious steps toward living authentically. This dialogue can build mutual respect and reduce misunderstandings. In the end, breaking free from the social clock is about reclaiming time as a personal journey rather than a checklist. It's about honoring our unique pace, setting our own priorities, and embracing life in a way that feels true. When we do this, we not only find freedom, but also cultivate a deeper sense of fulfillment and peace. 6. Your life map doesn't have to look like anyone else's. In a world that thrives on comparison and visible milestones, it's easy to believe that life is a race and everyone is either ahead or behind. But the truth is much softer and more personal than that. Someone else may reach their destination sooner, but if that destination was never meant for you, then how much does timing really matter? We all carry different stories, values, and dreams. Yet society often paints one single path as the ideal. Graduate at a certain age, settle down by another, and reach success by a particular point in life. But following that standard path doesn't always guarantee fulfillment. And choosing a different one doesn't mean you're lost. It might just mean you're listening more closely to your own voice. Living meaningfully requires courage, the courage to accept that your timeline might not make sense to everyone, but it makes sense to you. It takes clarity to realize that your pace is not wrong. It's simply yours. The world moves fast, but you don't have to. Like a gardener, you can choose to plant your seeds in the right season, not the rushed one, and then wait patiently for them to bloom. This mindset invites peace. It quiets the noise that tells you you're behind or not enough. It reminds you that there's no universal deadline for happiness, love, or success. These things don't come with expiration dates. They come when they're nurtured, chosen, and welcomed at the right moment for you. And if sometimes you still feel like you're running late, take a deep breath. It's okay. Living true to yourself is never a mistake, even if it means arriving a little later than others. After all, life isn't a competition. It's not about being the first to arrive, but about arriving whole, honest, and ready. So let go of the map that was handed to you by others. Draw your own, walk your path, take pauses. Change directions, celebrate the detours. Because this journey, your journey, isn't meant to look like anyone else's. And that's exactly what makes it beautiful. No one is ever truly late when they are living in alignment with who they are. And if you are late, that's all right too. Life is not a race, it's a journey inward. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.